My fiancée, a powerhouse career woman, fell in love with a poor assistant who was juggling multiple jobs. She was adamant about breaking up with me, the scion of a wealthy family. I thought it was a fleeting moment of pity, so I gave the assistant a sum of money to disappear for good. A few years later, my ex-fiancée had become the CEO of a major corporation. Her first order of business was to destroy my family. Standing over my metaphorical corpse, she crowed, "If you hadn't interfered, Leo and I would have been married with children long ago. This is the karma you deserve." Only then did I realize that the assistant was the spitting image of her white moonlight, the boy next door who had died in a car crash. When I opened my eyes again, I was back at the gala where my fiancée was publicly declaring her love for the assistant, condescendingly pressuring me to call off our engagement. This time I walked straight up to the capital Zit girl, an arranged marriage between our families, in or out. I owe the success of this new product launch to Leo's support and care. "Leo, I'm in love with you." At the celebratory banquet, my fiancée, Tiffany Young, was slightly tipsy, gazing affectionately at her assistant, who wore a cheap t-shirt and had a beauty mark under his left eye. Her declaration stunned the room. The guests either pretended not to hear or laughed it off, saying she'd had too much to drink. After a moment of awkward commotion, someone pushed Tiffany into my arms. "Tiff, Sincere is right here. You should go sober up." Everyone was smiling, but their eyes were filled with embarrassment. Those who knew her well understood. Tiffany Young, once a relentless go-getter and now a startup founder, had discipline and ambition etched into her bones. She would never allow herself to make such a public mistake. Sure enough, faced with the crowd's reaction, Tiffany just sneered. She recoiled from my touch with disgust, swirling the red wine in her glass, no longer pretending to be drunk. I wasn't joking. "I love Leo. He is my true love, Sincere Harrison. You're just a clueless, rich kid. What would you know about soulmates? You can't stop me this time. I stared at Tiffany. A defiant smirk played on her lips, her eyes challenging me. In that moment, I understood. Tiffany Young had been reborn too. As I hesitated, Leo stumbled down from the stage. "Mr. Harrison, there's nothing going on between Miss Young and me. I'll resign tomorrow. Please don't fight because of me." Tiffany, not expecting Leo to back down, grabbed his arm in front of everyone and interlocked her fingers with his. "Leo, your mother is in the hospital. If you quit, how will you afford her medical bills? You only dropped out of college to pay for her treatment. Are you going to give up now?" "Leo, I understand you. I'll help you." Tiffany's own mother had died young because they couldn't afford medical care. So Leo's situation struck a chord. That, combined with the unrequited love from her past life, led the reborn Tiffany to use this gala to force my hand and make way for Leo. Seeing Tiffany's aggressive stance, the crowd gasped. Everyone knew I was a complete simp for her. Seeing my silent forbearance, one of my friends tried to mediate. "Big H, she's just mad you missed her birthday last time. Why don't you apologize?" Another friend even suggested, "Why not get on your knees and beg? A real man knows when to bend. It's not shameful to give in to your wife." I had been captivated by the fiercely competitive Tiffany when we met. I'd even threatened to cut ties with my own family to make them accept her. Now, with her company just starting to find its footing, she couldn't wait to kick me to the curb. Seeing my silence, Tiffany thought she had me cornered. She lifted her chin, her tone imperious. "Sincere Harrison, I'm telling you right now, whether you apologize or get on your knees, I'm still calling off the engagement. If you don't agree, I agree." I cut her off before she could finish. "Let's call it off." Right now my voice was firm and decisive. My friends froze. Tiffany herself trembled, staring at me in astonishment. She had planned to use me as a stepping stone to profess her love for Leo, but her prepared lines were now useless. She could only shoot me a resentful glare. "Sincere Harrison, you've finally come to your senses. That's good. Even though I don't love you, we can still be friends. Once the company goes public, Leo and I will get married. I hope you can be there." "Go public?" I scoffed. In my past life, I had poured money and connections into her company, allowing it to survive the brutal market and successfully go public. Now, without me, facing a business world full of sharks, did she really think she could make it with this nobody, Leo? I glanced at Leo, who was trembling with suppressed glee. Sensing my gaze, Leo's lips curled into a smirk. He adopted a victor's pose. Big H, I apologize for everything that happened tonight, but true love is priceless. Please understand. I had investigated Leo. His story about dropping out of college for his sick mother was a lie. He was expelled for fighting over a girl. His part-time jobs were actually him trolling gyms, looking for a sugar mama. Meeting his provocative gaze, I waved my hand impatiently. Since you two leeches have found each other, I'm certainly not going to stoop to a beast's level. Leo's face turned pale. Tiffany rushed forward to shield her man. Sincere Harrison, I know you're madly in love with me, but there's no right or wrong in love. Leo is innocent in all this. I'm sorry for the pain of breaking the engagement, but I can't betray my own heart and force myself to marry you. I laughed as if I'd heard the most ridiculous joke in the world. I laughed so hard I nearly split my sides. Tiffany Young, are you done with your performance? If the show's over, could you please move aside? With that, I walked towards the girl in the beret who had been hiding in a corner, peeking at me. Seeing me approach, she tried to slip away, but a stack of Polaroid photos fell to the floor with a clatter. They were all solo shots of me. I smiled and said, Victoria Prescott, will you marry me? The girl who had been trying to flee turned back in shock. Sincere bro, are you insane? She asked, her voice filled with disbelief. I pulled out a ring, an arranged marriage between our families. In or out? The surroundings fell silent. The Prescotts were a political dynasty, old money. The Harrisons were titans of the capital's financial world. An alliance between our two families would reshape the power structure of the elite circle. Seeing I was serious, Victoria's expression turned emotional. You won't regret this? Victoria and I were childhood friends. I'd always thought she just saw me as an older brother. It wasn't until my past life, when she collected my body and relentlessly sought revenge against Tiffany, that I realized she had truly loved me. Thinking of this, I nodded firmly. But Tiffany couldn't stand it. She crossed her arms and stepped forward, her voice dripping with sarcasm. Sincere Harrison, just because I broke up with you, you're going to propose to someone else with the ring you bought for me? Is this your idea of revenge? Leo also stepped up to get some attention. He produced a bracelet from somewhere. Tiffany, may I call you that? This is a family heirloom from the Millers for my future wife. Will you accept it? Tiffany beamed, leaning against Leo like a delicate flower. As long as it's from you, I'll love it. I ignored their little show. Instead, I held the diamond ring out to Victoria, size 12. It has your name engraved on the band, and it's a prong setting, your favorite. Do you like it? When Victoria picked up the 10-carat diamond ring, its brilliant sparkle not only lit up the hotel but also blinded the onlookers. The crowd of gossips erupted. Holy crap, she threw away a $20 million diamond for a $200 piece of silver junk, and she calls herself a career woman? What a fool, ha. And she had the nerve to say Big H couldn't live without her. That's hilarious, the chatter filled the room. Tiffany's face turned a shade of purple with rage. I didn't even spare her a glance as I left. Tiffany was so furious she stomped her foot. She yelled at my retreating back. Sincere Harrison, do you think putting on this show will make me come back to you? I'm telling you, I will never compromise for money as if to provoke me. Tiffany, who had always valued her privacy, started flaunting her new life on social media the very next day, making sure to tag me in every post. One picture showed her and Leo having a candlelight dinner on a yacht in the Aegean Sea. Another showed her flying to an international forum to give a lecture. Sometimes it was her in France personally cooking a steak for her man. Every photo had a caption, 3 meals a day, 4 seasons a year. Home is wherever you are. I wasn't idle during this period either. In my past life, Tiffany had seized control of the Harrison fortune so quickly because I had shirked my responsibilities. So the first thing I did was go home and tell my parents I had turned over a new leaf and was ready to take over the family business. Therefore, when a week passed and Tiffany hadn't received any desperate pleas from me, and our major clients, hearing we'd split, were all threatening to cancel their contracts with her, she couldn't hold out any longer. A frantic call came through. "Sincere Harrison, I was drunk the other day and said the wrong things. I was just trying to test how much you love me." Heh, so much for not compromising. It was always like this. She'd offer a flimsy excuse, and I'd forgive her without a second thought. When I didn't immediately argue back, Tiffany assumed she had placated me. I could hear her sigh in relief over the phone, her voice regaining its confidence. "Sincere Harrison, I knew you were devoted to me. There's no way you could fall in love with someone else. I don't know what's gotten into these clients. They're all demanding their deposits back. Quick wire me $100 million, don't worry." Calling off the engagement was just something I said in anger. I'll be at the engagement party on time. The reborn Tiffany was trying to have her cake and eat it too, enjoying her romance with her little assistant while using our so-called love to keep me on the hook, making me willingly fund her ventures. Too bad she had already killed the lovesick fool I used to be. Now, hearing her graciously offer to marry me, I only felt disgusted. "Tiffany Young, if you need money, why don't you ask your boyfriend?" "Oh wait, he probably has to ask you for money just to buy his own underwear, doesn't he?" Tiffany was furious. She started screaming at me through the phone. "Sincere Harrison, I already told you it was a misunderstanding. Why are you being such a selfish and petty man about this? Do you believe I'll skip the engagement party next month?" "The engagement party?" I laughed in disbelief. A green tea bitch and her dog. A match made in heaven. "I wish you and Leo a long and happy life together. Not utterly destroying her was the greatest mercy I could show. And she still thought she could manipulate me with my feelings for her? Pathetic. But Tiffany wouldn't give up. After I hung up, she sent dozens of text messages with excuses. I blocked her number. Somehow she got a hold of a friend's phone and called me again. I immediately hung up. A minute later, an unknown number called. I frowned, answered, and put it on speaker. "Mr. Harrison, I'm guessing you wouldn't want the scandal of your girlfriend's suicide to break just as you're taking over your company, would you?" It was Leo. My heart skipped a beat. This quiet dog was finally starting to bite. When I didn't respond, that punk thought he had me. His voice was smug, and he lectured me with a condescending tone. "Mr. Harrison, Tiffany is so distraught over you that she's threatening suicide. You two were in love. Surely you don't want her to end her life at such a young age? $100 million for a wife. That's a deal that's a sure win for you and for the Harrison Corporation. You should consider it." I couldn't believe that for Leo's sake, Tiffany would willingly let herself be used like this. "How about this?" Leo paused. "I'll send you the account number in a bit. As long as you wire the $100 million, I'll help you talk Tiffany down." Fearing I wouldn't commit, he added a threat. "Don't worry, as soon as the money arrives, I guarantee I won't let Tiffany slit her wrists or jump off a building or anything." I had planned to stay out of Leo's business, but this punk had the audacity to threaten me. I was genuinely amused. Life gets dull, and then you have clowns trying to tell you what to do. I gave my assistant a look, and he understood. I toyed with Leo for a few more minutes like playing with a monkey, until we had traced his location and recorded the call. Then I drawled lazily, "Police, there's a man here attempting to commit fraud. Beep, beep, beep." Hearing my words, the punk panicked and immediately hung up. 2 hours later, my office door was kicked open. Tiffany stormed in, screaming at me. "Sincere Harrison, why did you call the police? Don't you know Leo was arrested? You've ruined him." I glanced up at her. "What do you mean, I ruined him? Wasn't it you who gave him my number? How else would he have bothered me?" Tiffany was speechless. In our past life, I had given Leo $1 million, so she was certain that for her sake I'd be willing to part with even $100 million this time. In the past, I truly couldn't bear to see a single hair on Tiffany's head harmed. But now, a woman who had already betrayed me? Was she worthy of being cherished in my hands? Seeing my calm demeanor, Tiffany glared at me fiercely. "Sincere Harrison, I am so sick of a selfish and petty man like you. I will get Leo out, and I will marry him. Your engagement party is at the Crown, right? You don't want me as your bride? Just you wait." After saying her piece, she shot me one last venomous look and stalked out, head held high in her heels. A week later, I understood what she meant by "just you wait." Despite her severe cash flow shortage, she used her memories from the past life to bet her entire fortune on a stock that was about to have a 7-day winning streak. Overnight, she staged a stunning comeback. Her nearly bankrupt startup transformed into the hottest new name in the elite circle. She was even hailed as the stock whisperer. Riding the wave of hype, she booked a top-floor garden at the Crown Hotel and invited all the who's who of the elite circle. To humiliate me, she deliberately scheduled her engagement party on the same day as mine. Knowing I had arranged for a fleet of 18 luxury cars, she waved her hand and had her new admirers assemble a convoy of 18 sports cars. Knowing I had commissioned a custom wedding gown from a famous international designer, she found a mining magnate to source a one-of-a-kind pink diamond for herself. She thought she was earning face for Leo. What she didn't realize was that the more she did, the more people outside called Leo a kept man, a gigolo who was being sponsored. A friend warned her, asking if her constant competition with me was a sign of unacknowledged love. Tiffany just sneered. "He's just a rich kid who gave me a little support when I was down. If it wasn't for the money, I would never have dated him. Now, I'm going to show him just how happy I am without him." My fiancée, Victoria, showed me the video, just as I finished an international conference call. I expected my frank and outspoken girl to mock Tiffany relentlessly. Instead, her eyes welled up with tears, and she wrapped her arms tightly around my neck. "Sincere, bro, I know you wouldn't have looked back at me if she hadn't broken your heart. Don't worry, I won't be willful or spoiled anymore. I'll learn how to manage household affairs. I'll be gentle and supportive. I'll be the person who stands by your side, this silly girl." When she learned I was facing difficulties after just taking over the business, she immediately used the Prescott name to put pressure on my opponents. When she knew I was returning late from a business trip, she would make a late-night snack and wait up for me. Now, hearing Tiffany's bitter words, she was clearly worried, but was still treading carefully, afraid I might change my mind. I pulled her into my arms and gently kissed her forehead. "Don't you worry. No matter what happens at the engagement party, you are my one and only bride." On the day of the engagement, drawn by the union of the Harrison and Prescott families, and also by Tiffany's new stock whisperer fame, a horde of reporters showed up. The moment Tiffany and Leo got out of their car, they were mobbed. Seeing me standing at the hotel entrance, Tiffany looked triumphant. As the reporters swarmed her, she shot me a smug glance and announced in a loud, firm voice, "Everyone, I'd like to take this opportunity to formally announce that Mr. Sincere Harrison and I broke up a long time ago. As a modern woman, I cannot marry into a relationship that isn't pure, just for the sake of money. I apologize that Mr. Harrison, unable to handle the blow, has been forced to accept an arranged marriage with his family. Though my breakup with Tiffany was never public, it was common knowledge in our circle." Her deliberately repeating it now was a clear slap in my face. Leo also stepped forward. He looked lovingly at Tiffany in her white dress, putting on a pitiful act of a man fighting against a marriage of convenience. "Tiffany, it's all my fault. Love is innocent. I almost threw up." I let out a cold laugh. "Are you two done with your little drama? If you're feeling better, could you please move yourselves and these dozen pieces of scrap metal out of the way?" Leo jumped up, furious. "These are Maseratis. How dare you call them scrap metal?" The moment he finished, the crowd erupted in laughter. Then the sound of rotors filled the air as a dozen helicopters descended from the sky. The hotel dispatched 100 security guards who scrambled to clear the area. Tiffany and Leo were dumbfounded. How could this be? They stood with their mouths agape, looking like they'd been struck by lightning. So many helicopters, such a grand procession for a bride. In a city like this, it required not just money, but more importantly, special flight permissions. Reporters backed away, snapping photos. The crowd took videos as they retreated. Tiffany and her 18 sports cars were shooed away like frightened chicks by the security guards, directed towards the underground garage. 10 helicopters landed one by one. Unloaded from them were bags of gold, cases of cash, and countless property deeds and car keys. The onlookers went wild. Proposing with helicopters was unheard of. Using sacks for gold and cash, the sincerity was unprecedented. Just then, the security guards formed a line, flowers appeared, and music began to play. When my fiancée, Victoria Prescott, stepped out of a helicopter wearing a custom gown worth hundreds of millions, adorned with a sapphire from a British royal auction, the crowd cheered. "Oh my God, are those diamonds on her dress? It's like a river of stars. The sapphire on her neck is gorgeous." So the mysterious buyer was Mr. Harrison. Amidst the envious gazes, Victoria descended like a goddess, walking step by step towards me. Tiffany's eyes were practically bleeding with jealousy. Even in our past life, when I had loved her to death, I had never spent half my fortune on an engagement party. But after taking a deep breath, she put on a dismissive expression. "A bunch of money grubbers. How could any of you possibly understand what true love is?" Fine. We're money grubbers, we're materialistic. But if words are so cheap, why was she sending people with red envelopes to bribe reporters to come up and cover her ceremony when the engagement party began? At the venue, seeing that not a single reporter had moved, Tiffany had the MC turn the sound system up to maximum. I had expected Tiffany to pull some tricks, but I didn't think they'd be this classless. My friends went to argue with them. Leo claimed we were just jealous of his better sound system and threatened to call the police if we laid a hand on him, since the reporters were all there. I was genuinely shocked by their shamelessness. Truly, when someone has no shame, they are invincible. Just then, boom, as if even the heavens couldn't stand it anymore. A few minutes later, the sky opened up in a torrential downpour. Looking up, I saw a ghostly-looking Tiffany with her makeup running, and a dejected, slouching Leo, reluctantly running down from the rooftop. They were also the stars of an engagement party, but compared to Victoria and me, they looked utterly pathetic. The guests at our banquet burst out into unabashed laughter. Victoria glared at the people who had just been praising her as the stock whisperer, fuming. "You promised you'd come to my engagement party, but you defected at the last minute. Don't expect me to help you with stocks ever again." But the elite sons in the circle just laughed as if it were a huge joke. "Money, in our circle, is just the cost of a car. Did you really think your little bit of cash could control us, in the face of real connections and resources? Exactly, you dumped Big H for a loser like that. With your poor judge of character, we called you the stock whisperer once, and you actually started taking yourself seriously. Isn't it the truth? Some people just have a thing for gigolos and kept men. I heard this poor schmuck only has a high school diploma." "Ha ha ha, that's hilarious." Leo's face turned beet red. He wished the ground would swallow him whole. Tiffany kept her head down, her face a mask of fury. When she was with me, Tiffany was always greeted with fawning calls of Miss Young. Especially in her past life, when she had reached the pinnacle as a CEO, no one would have dared to disrespect her to her face. Now, having her pretensions torn away by these irreverent rich kids, Tiffany was both ashamed and furious. She clenched her fists so tight her whole body trembled. I thought after such a fiasco, Tiffany's pride would send her home early. I was wrong. She cornered me by the hotel restrooms. "Sincere Harrison, I got engaged to another man. Why didn't you try to stop me?" Seeing me come out, she darted in front of me, blocking my path. She reeked of alcohol, and there was a heart-wrenching brokenness about her. Unfortunately for her, I was no longer the old Sincere. I acted as if I hadn't seen her and walked right past. But Tiffany called out to me again. "Sincere Harrison, do you really not love me anymore?" I found it laughable. We had both just gotten engaged to other people today, and she was still pulling this stunt. "Sincere Harrison, I was wrong. Seeing the way you looked at Victoria today, I know I've lost. But I did all of this because I care about you. I wanted to see you get jealous for me. I wanted to see you go crazy for me, but now, why won't you even look at me?" Her face was a mask of grievance, her voice trembling on the verge of tears. In both lifetimes, this was the first time Tiffany had ever lost her composure like this, and I just found it ridiculous. Once I was the one who loved her and couldn't have her. Now that I'd let go, she was claiming she loved me. I stared at her, my voice calm. "Tiffany Young, didn't you like Leo? You were the one who demanded we break up. You were the one who said I didn't understand love. Now that I've let you go and fulfilled your wish, you're playing the victim. Is there something wrong with you?" Tiffany's emotions grew more intense. She grabbed my arm, pleading. Sincere, it was a moment of impulse and obsession. "But why is it that when I used to tell you to leave, you would beg me to get back together, but now you won't even look back? Why?" Her eyes were full of tears, perhaps from the pain of having her plaything taken away, or perhaps from the regret of not realizing her love for me sooner. But I shook off her touch. Just as she had once recoiled from me in disgust at the gala, I sneered. "Tiffany Young, you and I are done. I have someone I love now. Please stop harassing me." With that, I took a step to leave. But Tiffany was relentless. She rushed from behind and wrapped her arms around my waist. "Sincere, I don't believe you could be so heartless to me. We were together for 7 years. Your love and obsession for me were bone deep. Tell me, why do you hate me so much now? Did you find something out?" My body instinctively stiffened. Tiffany immediately let go and rushed in front of me. "Sincere, you had that dream too, didn't you? That's why you hate me, why you chose Victoria without a second thought. But have you ever considered that it might have just been a dream? That none of it was real?" She was wearing a thin blouse, and her body trembled uncontrollably from the emotional stress. I didn't answer right away. The idea of rebirth was indeed unbelievable, and under the influence of alcohol, my mind felt numb for a moment. Tiffany just stared at me pitifully, stubbornly waiting for my answer. I found it ironic. I used to chase her like a simp, and she couldn't have cared less. Now that I'd let go, she was suddenly remembering my good qualities? But when she was flaunting her love for Leo, forcing me to break our engagement in public, and conspiring with him to extort $100 million from me, did she ever stop to think that I was a person, that I would be hurt by her betrayal? "Tiffany Young, whether it was real or not, the fact is you chose Leo. That is undeniable. You don't deserve to ask for my forgiveness." A wounded look crossed Tiffany's eyes. She froze for a moment, biting her lip, still trying desperately to salvage the situation. "Sincere, aren't you curious why I had to stage that car accident to kill you and your parents?" I flinched, staring at her intently. Seeing she had my attention, Tiffany said unwillingly, "It was because Leo told me that 15 years ago, it was your family's car that killed the boy next door, my first love. I acted rashly in a moment of impulse. I regretted it so much afterward. So it was because of Leo. It was all his scheme. In my past life, after learning that Leo's father was the drunk driver in the accident involving my family's car, I sympathized with the hardships he and his mother faced. I was also genuinely worried about Tiffany's involvement with him, which is why I gave him $1 million to leave. I never imagined my kindness would fuel Leo's greed and make him repay my generosity with malice." Looking at Tiffany, I felt a surge of anger. Leo's father was driving drunk. My family paid for everything, covered the hospital bills. Weren't we the victims in that situation? Besides, why did Leo wait until you were in charge of the company to tell you this? Why didn't he dare to confront me, and instead resorted to these behind-the-scenes schemes? Did you never once suspect him? Tiffany looked at me in disbelief. Tears welled in her eyes as if she had never considered this question before. They say you can't wake a person who's pretending to be asleep. At this point, I had nothing more to say to her. In the 7 years we were together, not only were you obsessed with your dead white moonlight, but you also sentenced my family and me to death based on a single sentence from Leo. Tiffany Young, if you had even a shred of trust in me, if you weren't so self-righteous and had just asked, we would never have ended up here. I have a fiancé now. Please, stop bothering me." Tiffany's tears fell like priceless pearls down her pale cheeks. "Sincere, you can't be so cruel. I do love you." She had always been a strong career woman. In this life or the last, tears were something that should never have appeared on her face. Now, because of me, she had cried more than in the entire 7 years we were together. "Sincere, there was a misunderstanding between us. Maybe being reborn was heaven's way of giving me a chance to make it up to you. Can we start over, please?" I waved my hand impatiently. "A misunderstanding, really? Tiffany, every time you were drunk you called out your white moonlight's name. I knew I couldn't compete with a dead man, but after 7 years together I couldn't even compare to a substitute? If I repay treachery with kindness, what is left for those who are actually kind to me? In this new life, I was meant to cherish the person right in front of me, and you are not worthy." With every word I spoke, Tiffany's face grew a shade paler. After my last sentence, she collapsed onto the floor. "I'm sorry, Sincere. I grew up poor. The boy next door gave me my first taste of warmth, and I always thought it was love. It wasn't until today, seeing you with another woman, that I realized what I felt for him was gratitude. What I feel for you. That is the love between a man and a woman." I let out a cold laugh. "Who you love and who you're grateful to has nothing to do with me. Do as you please." With that, I turned and walked away, ignoring her pitiful pleas. I had only taken 2 steps when my fiancée Victoria emerged from around the corner. "Sorry, Sincere bro, I didn't mean to eavesdrop. It's just, I heard you talking about being reborn, and I was so curious why you suddenly changed your mind and proposed to me." I took her hand and intertwined our fingers. "Silly girl, call me your husband from now on." Seeing me walk away with Victoria, Tiffany, still sitting on the floor, began to sob even more heartbrokenly. But it was a shame. Her life had nothing to do with me anymore. I heard that Tiffany tried to break up with Leo the very next day. Unfortunately, Leo demanded $10 million in emotional distress compensation. Tiffany just threw a stack of his own bills at his head. Leo, furious, threatened to leak her private information and make her a disgrace in the business world. But the Tiffany who was no longer blinded by love was not so easily manipulated. She made it clear if he released a single photo, she would make sure he spent the rest of his life behind bars. When both threats and pleas failed, Mrs. Miller threw a straw mat down at the entrance of Tiffany's company building. She put on a show crying, making a scene, and threatening suicide, lamenting how her evil daughter-in-law had used and abandoned her son and disrespected her. The once engaged couple had become mortal enemies overnight. This kind of gossip instantly attracted bloggers looking for a trending story. While his mother wailed and screamed downstairs, Leo was busy live streaming, milking the situation for views and donations. Tiffany simply called the police. She produced 2 sets of documents. One was proof of the $500,000 in medical bills she had paid for Mrs. Miller, with a clause that if it wasn't repaid in a month, the son would be responsible for the mother's debt. The other was a stack of IOUs from Leo's escapades with prostitutes during their relationship. She publicly clarified that she had no marital ties to Leo, that their finances were separate, and that whether it was loan sharks or credit card debt, whoever incurred it was responsible for it. Leo had been using Tiffany's name for all his spending. The total debt amounted to several $1,000,000. Even the debt collection agencies would hound the mother-son duo relentlessly. Having tasted the sweet life, there was no way Leo was willing to go back to being poor. 2 weeks later, backed into a corner, Leo called my number again. "Mr. Harrison, I have your ex-girlfriend. If you don't want anything to happen to her, you'll wire the money." The same old trick? I was amused by Leo's lack of intelligence. He didn't stop to think that a woman like Tiffany, who had fought her way up, would know he'd get desperate and wouldn't have a contingency plan. Sure enough, just as Leo finished speaking, I heard a police officer yell through the phone, "Don't move, hands up." This was followed by the sounds of Leo resisting arrest and then crying out in pain as he was subdued. I was about to hang up when a voice came through the phone. It was Tiffany. "Sincere, when Leo called just now, were you worried about me even for a second?" So that's why the call came through to me. Tiffany hadn't given up yet. I glanced at the sky outside my window. If you were so curious, why didn't you wait for my answer before letting the police rush in? Tiffany froze. Her voice began to tremble. Sincere, I was scared. I wanted to know, but I was also afraid to know. I really regret everything. My voice was firm. I'm married, Tiffany. Not taking revenge on you is the biggest concession I can make. From now on, don't contact me again. I hung up the phone. Just then, a news report came on about a kidnapping case. The sought-after female entrepreneur was shown at the scene of the crime, sobbing uncontrollably. The reporter said she was crying tears of joy after her ordeal. It was only when she cried until she collapsed from exhaustion and fainted on the spot that doctors belatedly realized she might be suffering from depression. In the years that followed, at every business gala, a pair of eyes would silently watch me from a distance. I pretended not to notice. No one ever brought it up. Until 20 years later, the owner of that gaze no longer appeared. My wife handed me her phone, showing me a news article. She committed suicide at home. She left her entire fortune to charity. I let out a long sigh. Tiffany Young, I forgive you.